The mansion learned Linnea before Corvin ever did. She moved through its halls like breath on glass, unnoticed, unrecorded, unremembered. A maid, a shadow, someone whose name no one bothered to say out loud. Silence was the price of survival here, and Linnea paid it daily, head lowered, hands steady, ears open. Corvin liked it that way. He spoke around her, through her, never to her. He planned deaths with the same casual precision he used to order coffee. He believed invisibility meant ignorance. He was wrong. Linnea memorized everything. The pauses in his voice, the names that tightened his jaw, the floorboard that creaked when his temper broke. She learned the house the way others learned weapons. Quietly, patiently, for protection. Then, one night, the mansion stopped breathing. The alarms didn't scream. The lights didn't fail by accident. And when gunfire shattered the silence, it wasn't chaos that followed, it was calculation. Because when danger finally came for Corvin, it didn't come for Linnea. She had been ready for this moment longer than anyone realized. And by the time Corvin looked up and truly saw her, the balance of power in his house had already shifted. If you're hooked, stay with me till the very end of the story. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe button, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. I've got so many incredible stories coming your way, and you definitely don't want to miss any of them. Alright, let's get back to the story. Linnea learned early that the mansion rewarded silence. She moved through its corridors like a draft, felt, never seen. Each morning began the same way. Gloves on, hair tied back, eyes lowered. She polished surfaces that were already clean, straightened objects that would be disturbed again within minutes. Corvin liked order, but only the kind that reminded others who commanded it. He passed her without acknowledgement. Sometimes he spoke through her, as if she were glass. Coffee, he'd say, not looking up from his phone. Or worse, he'd stop mid-conversation, wait until she was close enough to hear, and continue, deliberately louder. It was never accidental. Linnea learned which conversations mattered by their pauses. Corvin paused when numbers were mentioned. He slowed his steps when names carried weight. He never used code words around her. Why bother? I didn't remember the furniture. She remembered everything. A crumpled note left in an ashtray. A half-erased number on a legal pad. The way Corvin's voice tightened whenever the Valeni name surfaced, followed by a careless laugh meant to disguise it. She collected these details the way others collected weapons, quietly, patiently, and only for protection. The mansion spoke if you listened. The west hallway floorboard near the study betrayed impatience. It creaked when Corvin was angry. The service stairs by the kitchen sang only under unfamiliar weight. Guards changed shifts at predictable intervals, grew sloppy when bored, louder when drunk. On Tuesdays, one always took an extra smoke break behind the garden wall. Linnea timed her movements to all of it. She knew when to vanish before Corvin entered a room and when to linger just long enough to hear the end of a sentence. Once, while kneeling to clean beneath his desk, she listened as he ordered a man erased with the same tone he used to ask for cream in his coffee. When she stood, he glanced down and frowned, not at her, but at the faint reflection of his face in the polished wood. Careful, he said. I don't like streaks. Yes, sir, Linnea replied, soft and obedient. The cruelty was never loud. It didn't need to be. It lived in the way he corrected her for things she hadn't done. In the way he discussed death while she stood within arm's reach. In the way he enjoyed reminding her she was replaceable. But Corvin never noticed how she paused at doorways. Never saw her eyes trace exits, corners, blind spots. Never questioned why the safe was always dust-free, or how she knew when to bring his coat before he asked. To him, Linnea was invisible. To the mansion, she was everywhere. And when danger finally came, it wouldn't find her unprepared. The first alarm didn't scream. It sighed, soft, almost polite, before dying completely. The cameras froze on their last frames. Corridors caught mid-motion like held breath. Somewhere deep in the mansion, a relay clicked once, then went silent. Linnea felt it before she heard it. The house changed its rhythm. The usual hum beneath the floors stuttered, then stopped. She paused in the laundry corridor, fingers tightening around the handle of her cart. Above her, voices rose, guards responding too fast, too loud. That meant panic. That meant someone had learned their routes. She didn't run. Running drew eyes. From the study came a sharp crack, followed by another. Gunshots, close. Linnea counted them automatically. 2 fired. 1 answered. Then a thud, heavy and final. She moved. The service stair took her upward, steps placed exactly where the wood stayed quiet. She passed a guard slumped against the wall, blood darkening his collar. His phone buzzed unanswered in his pocket. Down the hall, a door hung open where it should have been locked. The Valeni family never wasted time. Corvin's office door was half closed. Smoke bled from the gap, carrying the sharp scent of gunpowder. Inside, Corvin crouched behind his desk, one hand pressed to his side, the other reaching blindly for a drawer that refused to open. His gun lay several feet away, kicked out of reach. For the first time since Linnea had known him, Corvin looked small. He heard the door open and turned, teeth bared, fury flaring through pain. "Get out," he snapped. "Hide. If they find you." He stopped. Linnea stepped inside and closed the door behind her with careful precision. In one hand, she held his spare pistol, wiped clean. In the other, a compact medical kit he'd once mocked as unnecessary. She crossed the room without hurry, knelt, and slid the weapon within his reach. "They won't," she said. Her voice cut through the smoke, steady, unshaken. Corvin stared at her, disbelief overtaking anger. "How did you?" "I moved it this morning," she replied, already pressing gauze against his wound. "You were bleeding on the chair yesterday. I assumed it would happen again." A scream echoed from somewhere below, abrupt and short. Linnea didn't flinch. She tightened the bandage, her hands sure, efficient. "They bypassed the north gate first," she continued. "Use your maintenance codes. You never changed them after the last inspection." 2 guards were called away. Fake disturbance at the garden wall. The others are dead or distracted. Corvin swallowed. Pain and realization settling in equal measure. "You're listening to me?" She met his eyes then, calm and level. "I live here." The lights flickered once, then went out entirely. In the darkness, footsteps moved closer. Corvin gripped the gun. For the first time, he didn't give an order. He waited. And Linnea, invisible no longer, stood between him and the door, already thinking 3 moves ahead. Linnea worked as if the gunfire were background noise. She guided Corvin back into the chair behind the desk, her hand firm on his shoulder despite his instinct to resist. He winced as she pressed him down, then went still, surprised by the authority in the touch. The desk lamp lay shattered on the floor, its bulb flickering weakly, throwing uneven light across his pale face and the blood soaking through his shirt. "Don't move," she said. It wasn't a request. She cut the fabric cleanly, efficient, almost clinical. The wound was ugly but shallow, painful, not fatal. Linnea cleaned it with practiced speed, fingers steady even as another burst of gunfire echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. Corvin watched her in silence. He had interrogated men who screamed, men who begged, men who tried to bargain with lies and blood. Linnea did none of those things. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She treated him the way one treated a problem that had already been solved. "You're lucky," she said at last. "If they'd aimed lower, you'd be bleeding internally by now." He let out a humorless breath. "Lucky," he repeated. "You sound like a doctor." "I had to learn," she replied. "You don't call ambulances." That earned a sharp look. "You shouldn't know that." She met his eyes without flinching. "I know many things you never bothered to hide." Her hands moved as she spoke, sealing the wound, tightening the wrap. The pain sharpened, then dulled. Corvin's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. "Your security is a mess," Linnea continued, tone almost conversational. "Half the cameras run on outdated firmware. The motion sensors don't cover the service corridors. And your guards trust routine too much. It makes them predictable." Corvin scoffed weakly. "My security chief is careless," she cut in, "and arrogant. Like you." The words landed harder than the bullet had. She finished bandaging and stepped back, assessing her work. Only then did she allow herself a breath. Outside the office, something crashed, a table overturned, glass shattering. Voices shouted, "Closer now." Corvin stared at her, anger mixing with something unfamiliar. "You've been fixing my security?" "No," Linnaeus said. "I've been fixing my safety." She reached into the medical kit and withdrew a small device, a reprogrammed relay, wires neatly soldered. "I rerouted the backup generator months ago." "That blackout earlier?" "That was me making sure they thought they were alone." He stared at the device, then at her. "You planned this." "I prepared for it," she corrected. "There's a difference." Another gunshot cracked, followed by silence. Heavy footsteps moved past the office door, then away. Linnea listened, head tilted slightly, counting, mapping. Corvin swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" She met his gaze again, and this time there was no softness in her eyes. "You never asked." She snapped the kit shut and picked up the pistol, checking the chamber with practiced ease. When she placed it back in his hand, her fingers lingered just long enough for him to feel the shift. "You always said fear keeps people honest," she said quietly. "You were right." Then she turned toward the door, already moving ahead of him. For the first time in his life, Corvin realized he was no longer in control of his own house. Linnea stepped back into the hallway and became invisible again. She smoothed her hair, lowered her shoulders, and pulled the cleaning apron from the hook beside the office door. The transformation was immediate. The woman who had spoken with authority vanished, replaced by the quiet figure Corvin's men had walked past for years without a second glance. She took the service trolley and pushed it down the corridor, its wheels squeaking softly, just enough to sound harmless. The tray rattled with bottles and folded clothes. To anyone watching, she was only a maid doing her job in the middle of chaos, confused but obedient. Two gunmen rounded the corner ahead. Their weapons were raised, eyes scanning. Linnea kept moving, head down. "Hey," one barked. She froze, hands tightening on the trolley handle. Slowly, she looked up, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Fear, not the loud kind, the believable kind. I heard shots," she said. "Mr. Corvin said to clean the east wing. I don't want trouble." They exchanged a glance. One waved her through with irritation. "Get out of the way." Linnea nodded quickly and pushed past them, heart steady, breath measured. She counted their steps as they moved on. 5, 6, 7. Enough distance. She turned down the service corridor and quickened her pace. The house unfolded in her mind like a map she'd traced 1,000 times. She slipped through a side door and into the laundry room, where the hum of machines masked movement. From beneath a folded stack of sheets, she retrieved a small vial and poured its contents along the marble stairs leading from the upper hall. Clear, odorless. It would take weight to notice. She climbed higher, using the narrow servant stair that bypassed the grand hall entirely. Above, a chandelier swayed slightly as gunfire echoed below. Linnea reached its winch and loosened the tension just enough, not to fall at once, but to wait. The assassins moved fast, loud in their confidence. They expected resistance. They didn't expect the house itself to turn against them. One man slipped on the stairs, his shout cut short as he collided with another. The sound drew the rest forward. Too many feet. Too much weight. The chandelier gave way. The crash thundered through the mansion, glass exploding outward, metal screaming as it tore free. Linnea was already gone, sliding down the laundry chute as debris hit the floor she'd just left. She landed hard but rolled, breath knocked loose, pain flaring briefly before being dismissed. Pain was manageable. Noise was not. She emerged in the basement corridor and moved fast, feet silent, pulling the trolley along behind her. She could hear shouting now, panic creeping into trained voices. Fear sharpened people, but it also narrowed them. She led them where she wanted them. A reinforced pantry door stood at the end of the corridor, its steel frame disguised behind decorative wood. Linnea ducked inside, propped the door just enough to let light spill, then vanished through the secondary exit. The gunman followed. The door slammed shut behind them with a sound final enough to echo. Linnea locked it, slid the bolt, and leaned her forehead briefly against the cool metal. One breath. Just one. Then she straightened, wiped her hands on her apron, and disappeared back into the house, leaving the assassins trapped, shouting into the dark, and the mansion very much on her side. The intercom came alive with a soft click. In the security room, Corvin watched the monitors flicker back to life, selectively, deliberately. Not all at once. Just enough to see shadows pacing behind locked doors, silhouettes shifting in uncertainty. His fingers tightened on the armrest as a voice slipped through the speakers. Not loud, not rushed, almost intimate. "Marco," Linnea murmured. The man trapped inside the reinforced pantry froze. His head snapped up, eyes darting to the ceiling. On the monitor, Corvin saw his mouth move. "How does she know my name?" "You should have taken the money," Linnea continued calmly. "Valeni always leaves the last man behind." Another voice cut in, sharp with suspicion. "What is she talking about?" Corvin leaned forward. Linnea paced the service corridor as she spoke, one hand resting lightly on the wall, the other adjusting switches she had memorized long before tonight. "He promised extraction at the south gate," she said. "Did he tell you the cameras that were still live?" The men began shouting now, overlapping, frantic. One turned on another, grabbing his collar, demanding answers. Corvin felt something cold coil in his chest. That was his tactic. He had used it countless times, seed doubt, reveal just enough truth to fracture loyalty, let paranoia do the rest. Watching it turned against trained killers was unsettling in a way gunfire never had been. Linnea switched channels. In another hallway, two remaining gunmen advanced cautiously, weapons raised. The intercom above them crackled. "You're walking too fast," Linnea whispered. "He can't keep up." They stopped instantly. One spun, leveling his gun at the other. "What did she say?" "She's lying." The second snapped, but his voice wavered. Linnea tilted her head, listening, timing her words between heartbeats. "You always slow down when you're scared," she added softly. "Same as the stairs back home." The taller man swore and shoved his partner away. "How does she know that?" Corvin's breath caught. He remembered saying those exact words once, to break a man who refused to confess. He remembered the way silence had finished the job. On the monitors, the men began to fracture. Whispers turned into accusations. Accusations into raised guns. No shots yet. Fear was more effective when it lingered. Linnea let it. "You think you're being hunted." Her voice flowed through the mansion like smoke. "You're not. You're being watched." One man fired at the ceiling in panic. Another screamed for Valeni by name. Linnea said nothing for several seconds, letting the absence stretch until it hurt. Then, quietly, "He already sold you." Corvin closed his eyes. He had built an empire on moments like this, on the realization that the enemy was never the threat. Distrust was, and Linnea wielded it with terrifying restraint. On one monitor, a gun went off, too close, too fast. A body dropped out of frame. The remaining man staggered back, breathing hard, eyes wild. Linnea's voice softened. "You can still leave," she said. "If you're alone." The man collapsed to his knees. In the security room, Corvin stared at the screens, at the woman moving unseen through his house, dismantling an entire assault without firing a single shot. Horrified, fascinated, and finally forced to confront the truth he had ignored for too long. He had taught her everything. Corvin pushed himself up from the chair, pain tearing through his side like a warning flare. "We finish this now," he said, forcing strength into his voice. "Get me to the West Hall. I'll draw them out." He took one step. Linnea caught his arm. The contact was light, almost polite, but it stopped him cold. "No," she said. The word landed harder than any command he'd ever given. Corvin turned on her, anger flaring out of instinct. "You forget who." "Sit down," Linnea said. Not raised, not sharp, flat, final. For a moment, neither of them moved. The mansion breathed forward with distant echoes, metal clanging, a muffled shout, then silence again. Corvin searched her face for fear, for hesitation, for the reflexive obedience he'd trained into everyone around him. He found none. "You're bleeding," she continued, already guiding him back toward the chair. "Your left side is compromised. Your aim will be off. And if you fall in the hall, I won't be able to move you." "I've survived worse," he snapped. Yes, she agreed calmly. Because someone else paid the price. That stopped him. She pressed him down into the chair and tightened the bandage with a tug that drew a sharp breath from him. Then she crouched in front of him, meeting his eyes at level, not looking up anymore. You stay here, she said. You move when I tell you. You speak when I ask. If you don't, you die. Corvin laughed once, bitter and disbelieving. You're giving me orders now? I've been doing that all night, Linnea replied. You just noticed. She stood and crossed to the monitors, fingers dancing over the controls with quiet confidence. Corvin watched her, not the screens this time, but her. The way she anticipated movements. The way she paused just before a decision, not from doubt, but calculation. It struck him then, sharp and unwelcome. She wasn't improvising. She was executing. Every time you threatened someone, Linnea said without turning, you leaned forward on the third sentence. You lowered your voice, but never your eyes. That's when they broke. She switched camera angles. So I did the same. Corvin's throat tightened. You've been watching me. I've been surviving you. Another monitor showed the last remaining intruder backing away, weapon shaking. Linnea adjusted the intercom levels, then muted it entirely. Silence works best at the end, she said. Corvin shifted in the chair, suddenly aware of how little control he had left. He thought of all the times he'd spoken freely in front of her. All the secrets. All the habits. You were never serving me, he said quietly. Linnea finally turned back to him. No, she said. I was studying the only threat I couldn't escape. Footsteps approached, his men, regrouping at last. Corvin opened his mouth to command them. Linnea raised a hand. He stopped. And in that moment, wounded and seated in his own throne, Corvin understood the truth with chilling clarity. The pawn had crossed the board, and the game now belonged to her. Linnea heard him before she saw him. The sound was wrong. Too quiet, too controlled. Not panic, not confusion. Purpose. She slowed near the gallery corridor, fingers brushing the wall as she calculated exits that were already closing. The service door behind her was locked. The stairwell ahead was shadowed. He stepped out from between the columns as if he'd been waiting. Older than the others. Cleaner. His gun was lowered but ready, his eyes sharp with the kind of patience that didn't waste bullets. The lead assassin. The one Valeni trusted when the noise had to stop. Well, he said lightly. The ghost finally shows herself. Linnea didn't raise her hands. She didn't back away. She stood exactly where she was, shoulders relaxed, breathing even. Fear would have been a lie, and liars were easy to read. You shouldn't be here alone, he continued. Your tricks were impressive. But tricks end. She tilted her head slightly, studying him the way Corvin studied men before deciding how to break them. Not his weapon, his face. The tension at the jaw. The faint twitch near his eye when he mentioned Valeni. You're late, Linnea said. He smiled, thin. I like to see how things play out. So do I, she replied. His gun came up a fraction. This is where you stop talking. No, Linnea said calmly. This is where you start listening. She reached into the pocket of her apron and withdrew her phone, holding it where he could see the screen light up. A timer counted down in silent red numbers. 9:12, 9:11, 9:10. He frowned despite himself. What is that? A delay, she said. On your money. The smile vanished. Your accounts are routed through 3 shells. Linnea continued, voice level. Malta, then Zurich, then Belize. You favor redundancy. It makes you feel untouchable. The timer ticked lower. I've already bypassed the shells, she said. Every 10 minutes, the system waits for a code only I have. If I don't enter it, your balances start draining. Slowly at first. Enough to look like market fluctuation. His grip tightened. You're bluffing. I'm not, Linnea replied. In an hour, it accelerates. In 3, your partners panic. At 6, Valeni notices. And Valeni doesn't forgive men who lose money. Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. Corvin had used this tactic once. She remembered it clearly. No threats. No raised voice. Just inevitability laid out so calmly it felt merciful. The assassin swallowed. You can't walk out of this alive. Linnea's gaze didn't waver. I don't need to. She angled the phone so he could see the next number roll over. 8:59. You do, she said softly. He hesitated, gun lowering inch by inch as calculation replaced confidence. Around them, the mansion creaked, settling after violence, waiting. Leave, Linnea said. Go somewhere quiet. Call Valeni and tell him the job failed because you chose survival. And you? He asked. She smiled faintly, not kind, not cruel. I'll be right here, making sure you keep breathing. The timer continued its steady march downward. At last, the assassin stepped back. Then another. Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows, his footsteps retreating fast and uneven. Linnea exhaled only when he was gone. She entered the code with steady fingers and watched the timer reset. Somewhere behind her, the house was finally quiet. And she was still standing. The mansion didn't celebrate survival. It settled. The echoes faded first. Gunfire replaced by the soft hum of electricity, returning in stages Linnea had programmed herself. Lights warmed the corridors gradually, careful not to announce control too loudly. Silence followed, thick and complete. Linnea wiped her hands on a cloth and walked back to the study. Corvin sat where she'd left him, pale but upright, the pistol resting and used on the desk. He looked older in the steady light, smaller somehow. He opened his mouth to speak. She raised a finger. Not yet. She crossed to the secure phone embedded beneath the desk panel, his private encrypted line. Corvin had always guarded it like a relic, touching it only when matters needed to disappear. Linnea lifted the receiver without ceremony and entered the code. It accepted her instantly. Cleaners, she said when the line connected. This is Linnea. There was a pause on the other end. Confusion, then recognition. She didn't bother correcting it. 3 locations, she continued. Basement corridor, east stairwell, and the reinforced pantry. 2 alive, restrained. For deceased. No witnesses outside the estate. You'll arrive staggered. Use service roads only. She listened, eyes moving across the room, already checking details. Yes, I've secured the cameras. No, the neighbors heard nothing beyond fireworks. And bring replacement glass for the gallery chandelier. I want it restored by morning. She ended the call before questions could form. Corvin stared at her as if she had spoken another language. You gave them orders, he said quietly. I gave them instructions, Linnea replied. Orders invite interpretation. She moved through the house with purpose now, no apron, no hesitation. She opened doors, checked pulses, marked floors with discreet chalk lines. She directed Corvin's men when they arrived, her voice calm, precise, leaving no space for doubt. They followed without thinking, because certainty was contagious. The cleaners worked fast. Bodies were wrapped, blood erased, walls repaired. The pantry door was unbolted, its occupants escorted out under heavy sedation. Linnea watched it all with the same detachment she'd once reserved for scrubbing floors. Efficiency was mercy. By the time dawn hinted at the windows, the mansion looked untouched. Too untouched. Linnea adjusted it. Left 1 cracked banister, 1 scuffed wall. Perfection invited questions. Damage explained chaos. She returned to the study last. Corvin hadn't moved. You didn't call the police, he said. No, Linnea answered. You'd lose control of the narrative. He exhaled slowly. You handled this better than my underboss. She met his eyes. Your underboss wants your approval. I wanted the threat gone. Silence stretched. Not hostile, not comfortable. Changed. You knew exactly who to call, Corvin said. I've listened to you make these calls for years, she replied. I memorized what mattered. He nodded once, stiffly. Something like respect tried to surface, tangled with something darker. You cleaned up my mess, he said. Linnea picked up his coffee cup, refilled it, and placed it in front of him with deliberate care. No, she corrected softly. I cleaned the house. Outside, the sun rose as if nothing had happened. Inside, everything had. Linnea stepped into the study carrying a porcelain cup, the rich aroma of dark roast curling through the room like smoke from a slow-burning fuse. The mansion, usually alive with the low hum of hidden cameras, whispered halls, and distant footsteps, now lay in a rare, complete silence. Corvin sat slouched in his leather chair, the stiff lines of authority on his face softened by exhaustion, his hand loosely gripping a glass of whiskey as if it were a lifeline. He looked up, expecting the familiar deference, the automatic bows and nods of his staff, but Linnea did not bend, did not smile. She walked straight to the desk and set the cup down, her eyes locked on his. "You're awake," she said, voice calm, measured, carrying an authority that made even Corvin hesitate. She did not wear her apron. She wore the dark tailored coat he had once brushed past, never noticing the way it accentuated the precision of her movements. She placed a file on the desk, sliding it toward him like a chess piece. "We need to discuss the new terms." Corvin's brow furrowed. "Terms." His voice, usually the iron hammer of command, sounded brittle, uncertain. "Yes," Linnea replied, perching on the edge of the desk rather than standing submissively. "Your assets, your schedules, your security protocols, they are no longer solely yours to dictate. I've already moved funds, rerouted communications, and secured your safe houses. Valeni won't be back without thinking twice. But we need to talk about my role moving forward." He stared at her, at the deliberate calm in her posture, the way her hands rested on the polished wood as if they owned it. The air between them, once charged with the unspoken tension of servant and master, now thrummed with something different: acknowledgement, negotiation, and the silent admission of power. "You mean you're taking over?" Corvin's voice faltered, a tremor betraying the first real fear he'd shown in years. "I'm not taking over," Linnea said, her tone sharp but not unkind. "I'm claiming my place. I survived tonight by knowing you, by studying you, by seeing what others missed. You ignored me, underestimated me, and that ends now." Her gaze softened ever so slightly, a flicker of something like respect passing between them. "From this point on, I clean your messes, yes, but I also keep you alive. And I do it my way." Corvin exhaled, leaning back, the weight of realization pressing into him. He had spent decades building a world of fear and control, only to find that the quietest observer had rewritten the rules. The room felt smaller now, not because of walls, but because the balance had shifted. Linnea's presence was no longer background noise. It was the command center. He finally nodded, a slow, deliberate gesture, acknowledging what he had refused to see for years. Linnea poured herself a cup of coffee from the carafe she'd brought and sipped lightly, eyes never leaving his. The game had changed, and in this quiet, sunlit study, a new order settled over the mansion. One where power was no longer dictated by bloodline or brute force, but by mind, patience, and the unassuming strength of the one once called invisible.